people they want to do two things, right? They want to make money, but more than make money, they want to not lose their money. Right? Wouldn't you agree, Christina?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yes, and those are probably backwards,
Yeah.
The first, when people are, I think when they're first getting into real estate, it's scary, right? I think before they've gotten involved with somebody, there's you're entrusting your funds into the hands of somebody else. And if they're not proven, they don't have a track record, that's even, I think, a little more scary. So at the beginning, I had to basically just share with people the business model of how I was going to go through this process and protect their money along the way and earn them a return.
I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter.
Today we have a great guest, and I know I often have great guests, but let me tell you why this particular gentleman is a great guest for me. Not only is he somebody I'm interviewing for my show, not only is he somebody who comes and talks at my FIBI Pasadena meeting, he co-runs my FIBI Pasadena meeting with me. Woo, 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 woo. So clearly, this is a person that I have spent a lot of time with and a lot of years. And we have a lot of conversations, personal conversations back and forth. Like I think I'm due for having a conversation with him next week on how to manage my Indianapolis properties better. So he's going to step forward and help me move and grow inside of my real estate investing career. And I do my best to try to support him as well. So this mysterious gentleman you see over here is Kirk Carlstrom, and he is with Summit Investments. That's actually his company. He is the founder. In 2012, Kirk quit his corporate job of 10 years in order to pursue his dream of financial independence, financial freedom. You guys know how I love that, through real estate investing. Since then, he has primarily focused on fixing and flipping properties in Southern California and other markets using 100% private investor funding. I can verify that because I have actually invested with him myself personally. He and his team have purchased, renovated, and flipped over 100 houses in Los Angeles, the Bay Area, otherwise known as San Francisco, Austin, Texas, and Oregon. He has also been able to create a passive rental portfolio using his knowledge of creative finance that allowed him to start buying rental properties without using any money of his own. Kirk believes in the power of networking, which is why he helps run my club with me, and is grateful for all the people who've helped participate in his success. Kirk Carlstrom, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so very much, Miss Christina Suter.
It's great to have you here. I had to, I think we sent, 3 or 4 emails inviting you to the podcast, and you finally went, oh, yeah, I'll show up. Okay, sure, Christina, no problem. I'm like, dude, come on.
I wasn't sure they were real. I thought it was.
Oh, really? It's just some random suitor trying to get a hold of you. What is this?
Well, here we are.
Here we are. No, it's good. And well, you could also simply say you were too busy,
Well, that could be true depending on the day.
That could also be true for both of us, given how crazy things are these days. So I know your story, but my listeners don't know your story. So let's hear your story about how you got started in real estate. Why did you quit your job and start in real estate 10 years ago? But let's really talk about just like the story part, because we'll talk about like the entrepreneur part more.
Sure. Yeah. I was trying to write it in my bio, but I couldn't figure out the right wording on it. But essentially, I quit my job before I had made any money in real estate, because that's crazy.
That's crazy.
So, but to back up, so I come from a very conservative background. I like to point this out. My mom told me never get a job in sales because you never know how much money you're going to make each month. So that was kind of the paradigm that I was raised with, which obviously put a little bit of fear in my fear and trepidation and stepping out in new things. But, my journey starts, actually a long time ago, people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grow up, and I would tell them that I wanted to be independently wealthy. That is God's honest truth. Ever since I was little, I would say that. I never really had a specific career path in mind. Right. There was a period of time where I thought I was going to be a chiropractor, which is what my parents are. But that just didn't seem like I was going to have the level of independence that I wanted to. That's kind of a, you have to show up in order to get paid kind of job. And
Yeah.
passive income is a little bit better than that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Well, I
So,
personally believe that, but yes, not everybody is comfortable with that. My husband, Glenn, who you know, who
mhm.
you've met, you come to our house, you know his personality well. He is not comfortable with not having a regular job. All
Yeah.
his life, he had a regular job, W-2, steady paycheck. He would not be comfortable running his own small company.
Yeah.
Not work
So
for him.
yeah, that's totally the background I came from. You know, I went to college. I actually worked and went to school at the same time. So I've always had a pretty good work ethic. That is no fun to put yourself through school and work full time. But anyways, so I know we can't talk for hours and hours, but the point is I had been working a corporate job for about I don't know, so 4 or 5 years. And a guy that I worked with gave me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a real common book that we hear in the real estate investing circles. So that kind of started my back to that idea of like, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be financially free. Ever since a young age, I talked with my mom about money and investing and stuff like that. So I'm really grateful for that part of kind of my being raised. But I really wasn't sure how to do that. My wife and I, when we got married, we thought about different business ideas, and we just couldn't really pick something, or something didn't really resonate. But when we read that book, it just felt like an aha moment to really understand the idea of cash flow. And the simple fact of it is that when you have more cash flow than you have bills, then you're essentially financially independent. It's a
Right.
pretty simple concept to grasp onto.
Mhm.
So that kind of started the journey. I think that was in about 2004. Like I said, I'm really conservative, so I took a long time to get there. But I read a whole bunch more books by Robert Kiyosaki. And in 2010, I think I actually paid and went through a training course through the Rich Dad education. So I did that in 2010. And in 2012, by that time, I really felt like I had gone through enough training and had really absorbed enough of it and had exercised enough of it. I think in 2011 maybe was when I first started coming to FIBI. So we've known each other since before I ever did my very first deal. So you've been privileged to watch the entire journey.
I have, and it actually has been a privilege, which is part of why I invited you, as you know, to co-run my FIBI Pasadena meeting with me, is because I have had the privilege and the pleasure of watching you this whole journey so far to date. Your journey is not over, just to date. And
Yes.
it's been a good one, and it's been solid, and it's
Well, I share that because I think that that's so relatable by so many other people. There's so many people who are working a 9-to-5 job, and they feel trapped in that. They feel like they're not going to be able to accomplish their personal goals of freedom. They're not going to be able to do the things that they really want to do in their lives. So I know exactly what that feels like. I worked in a company that we were purchased by a public company, and I got to watch just a radical change and just kind of feel like the soul of the company got sucked out in this place that used to be cool to work at. I worked in a music company. We made audio recording equipment, and watch it go from that to just feeling really, really corporate. So, I just was looking for a way out and was not sure until I kind of latched onto the real estate things. So, so that's kind of the journey. 2012, I quit that job with the support of my fantastic wife, who has been 100% behind me since the very beginning. It's not my personal leaning to like quit a steady paycheck before I have any kind of income. And I had never made any money in real estate. But, I'm a person of faith, and I really felt like God kind of gave me I was pushing me in that direction. So we stepped out in 2012. By the end, that was the middle of the year. By the end of the year, I think we had 3 houses under contract. One of them we wholesaled off to somebody else. 2 of them, I flipped one in Oregon, and I flipped one in Southern California. Lost money on the one in Oregon, lost $50,000 on my first flip project. Really complicated deal, had partners. it took over a year to sell that one.
A year.
Yeah.
It's just hard.
But I'm still here.
You are
So
still here.
Yeah, I
Not
mean,
only are you
literally,
still
like
here, you're 100 houses down the pike from that one. 99
Yep.
to be accurate. 99.
No. I'm over 100 now.
Okay, you're
So
100 houses down the pike from
yeah, I've been
losing
saying 100
50,000 on
houses
your
for a couple of
first.
years. That's just because I'm over 100 now for sure. But yeah, that first deal, I mean, it could have sunk me, which is that's a whole Oprah show we could go into, just the mentality of going through that. But the bottom line is, the next year, 2013, I started actually doing wholesaling, and I wholesaled, I think, 4 deals and flipped 2. I kind of could do 1 flip at a time. That's kind of what I had the private money for. And I would wholesale off deals in order to make cash to keep my bills paid. And that's how I was able to hold that first property for the first year, take a $50,000 loss because I had made money in the other properties that I'd done. And at the same time, I felt a strong a pull that I needed to keep my investors whole. I had people, they came in as partners on that first deal. They were on the line to lose money, but I basically paid them almost everything back that they were on the hook to lose. So anyways, the next year, I don't remember. I think I went from flipping 2 to flipping 16 houses the next year. And then I kind of did somewhere around 20 a year for a few years, and the last couple of years has been less, but we've done. But yeah, quantum shift from that flipping 2 to 16, because I met an investor who started funding all of my deals, and I met them in the local Pasadena FIBI meeting. I've met many of my investors in the local FIBI Pasadena meeting. It's been a great place to hang out. Lots of good people.
I know you've done a lot of flipping, so you know flipping really well, and I could ask you questions about flipping, but let me also ask you questions about other people's money. Like, that's the thing that, as I've watched over time, you went from wholesaling to flipping to rentals, right? Which is kind of where you are now, which is cultivating rentals, and you're looking at a trajectory in front of you of continuing down that track of more the rental side versus just the flipping side, right? So we talked about how you're moving your personal portfolio as well as your business portfolio, right? Other people's money is the thing that's allowed you to do this. Like you said, you've used 100% of investors' money in order to be able to purchase everything every house you've purchased.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that, like that side of the business.
Excuse me. Yeah, no, it's one of the Franklin Covey 7 habits of highly effective people. I think it's habit number 2, maybe it's number 1. It's begin with the end in mind. And with that, I knew I had to use other people's money because I didn't have any money of my own. I mean, I had a small amount of money. I'd been working a corporate job. That's part of the problem. That's why I wanted out, was that I didn't really have a lot to show for the time that I had spent. So I knew that in order for me to flip and purchase properties, I needed to be able to raise money from private investors, people, and a lot of these are, the private investor, to demystify that, that's a lot of just the general people in your life. It could be your mom, it could be your aunt and uncle, it could be the guy you work with. I mean, there's so many people out there who have 20, 30, 50, $100,000 that's just sitting in some kind of account that's making 1% interest. They're making no money on their money. They're not even keeping up with inflation. So anyways, knowing that I didn't have enough money to do it on my own, I also knew that if I just used my own money, it would limit the amount of deals that I'd be able to do. And my whole model and going into it was I needed the ability to scale my business and do multiple deals at a time. And in order to do that, I needed to be able to cultivate private money. So when I got started, that's part of why, I spent so much time going to networking events, because I was looking for money. I was looking for people who had money looking to invest in deals like mine. So I literally, at the beginning, I would spend 2 or 3 nights a week going to different networking events, meeting people, pitching myself and what I was wanting to do, trying to find people who had money in their, IRA account or convert it to a self-directed IRA, or if they just had cash, etc. People who are looking for a better than 1 to 2% return on their money.
How do
And
you
that
think
took
you
a
got-
lot of time. At the beginning. It takes a lot more time at the beginning. It's like rolling a snowball down a hill. At the very beginning, when I was raising money, when I would meet somebody who had money and they showed interest that they were interested to invest, I would expect it to take about a year to be able to cultivate that relationship and their trust to be able to put them into an actual deal. I would expect that 6 to 12 month period of time be the period of time that it would take to show them deals and give them opportunities, essentially to turn me down until they felt comfortable to put money into a deal.
So how do you cultivate their trust and their comfort? You showed them deals, but there must be more that you've done since that, or more than just that.
I mean, typically how it would start would be I would meet somebody, whether it's at a networking event or at some other referral that somebody else said would pass on to me, and I would usually go out and I'd go have coffee with them for an hour, and I just walk them basically through my business model. I would explain to them how I find deals, the sourcing of the deals, how I would run my numbers on those deals, how I would walk through a rehab and come up with a rehab estimate, and be sure that we were going to be pretty darn close to those numbers. And then how we came up with our after repair and sales price of the property, how it's based on comps, based off hard data that the market has given us. We're not, pie in the sky looking for something that doesn't seem unreasonable. How we base all of that up, and how ultimately, and I think when you're raising money, one of the key things you have to do is you have to ultimately show people, people want to do two things, right? They want to make money, but more than make money, they want to not lose their money. Right? Wouldn't you agree, Christina?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yes,
and those are probably backwards,
Yeah.
When people are, I think when they're first getting into real estate, it's scary, right? I think before they've gotten involved with somebody, you're entrusting your funds into the hands of somebody else. And if they're not proven, they don't have a track record, that's even, I think, a little more scary. So at the beginning, I had to basically just share with people the business model of how I was going to go through this process and protect their money along the way and earn them a return. So, that's what that meeting would be for. And then as after that, usually people would sign on and say that they were interested. And then when I'd have a deal, I would contact them and run the numbers by them and answer any questions. And if they wanted to come out and see the property and walk through the property, then we would do that. That's what it was like at the beginning. Now it's totally different. Now I have established relationships with people. Raising money is much quicker and much easier. I have a long track record of success as well. So the conversations, like anything else, you'd hope you'd build a reputation and success and trust that you can leverage, and that makes everything move quicker. People, I think, have more confidence in me because I can literally show them 100 times that I've done this. And
return investors capital
and return money.
Return money. I mean, for me, like you said, the two priorities as an investor, right? Because my relationship with you started with you being a participant in my meeting, but then it changed to, no, you're doing flips. Let me give you money for your flips and be a personal investor in your flip. And then I invited you to co-run FIBI Pasadena with me, right? So there's a point where I make a decision before I hand anybody money. So I like to use this example. I got it from a class I took at the Apartment Owners Association, the AOA, right? And said, basically, you're handing the keys over to $100,000 investment to somebody, right?
Yeah.
If you got at the time, $100,000 car was considered a very expensive car. So let's just assume it's a $200,000 car.
I still think $100,000 car is expensive.
But the point is that you hand over this, like, you don't let any bozo just drive your car. You don't let, like, the valet is supposed to know how to drive your car, and they're supposed to not scratch your car. They're supposed to return your car to you. And the fancier the car is, and the more expensive the car is, the closer to the front door it's supposed to be parked.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. So if I'm going to hand you $100,000, which I have done, I've handed you $100,000. I expect you to not scratch it. I expect you to not lose it. I expect you to return it to me in whole. And the more I give you, the closer to the front door I expect it to be parked. Yeah. Right.
That's a great analogy.
Right. So yeah, it's a good analogy, when you're dealing with almost anybody, whether you're giving them an apartment door, you're giving them the door in one of your doors in your apartment, or whether you're giving a syndication. So yes, it's a good analogy. But the point being, I knew you were going to return my money to me. I don't hand money to people unless I have faith they will return the money to me. And I do a lot of due diligence on my side to ensure that this person's going to return the money to me. Like, my due diligence process for most people is anywhere from 5 to 10 hours of me doing due diligence with somebody before I hand them the keys to my very expensive $100,000 plus car. Right? So now you have a reputation. Somebody will email me or text me and say, hey, do you know Kirk? And I go, yeah, I know Kirk. Will he return my money? Yeah, he will. He's proven it to me personally. So I can say, I personally can support your reputation because I've had the experience. What do you do with somebody who doesn't have that experience? And what did you do early on? Right? For our people who are newer to real estate and newer to using other people's money, like, that trust factor to me is the first definer, like you said, not the second.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think to answer that question, like, how did I raise money before I had a reputation or ever do any deals? So, the simple answer to that was the first deal that I did. Well, let me back up. So in one of those networking events, I remember talking to a guy who led a local club. And I was asking him about raising money because the guy did a whole bunch of deals. And he told me, he's like, do whatever it takes to make your investors feel comfortable, protect your investors, do whatever it takes to make them feel comfortable. And so I think I really have taken that to heart. The very first deal that I funded, one of the flip I did in Southern California, my mom was my first investor. And but she didn't fund the whole thing. And then the other one was the one in Oregon that I did. And for that one, there were people that were not, they're not close relations. So what I did is I had one investor. She took a lien position. She was a lender on the property. And then the rest of the money was raised by bringing I think 4 other investors. So a total of 5 investors 4 investors came in as partners on an LLC.
Okay.
And that's how they felt comfortable because they were part owner.
Right.
So that gave them a part of the upside and the downside risk also. But that's what made them feel comfortable. And so I did what it took to make them feel comfortable. We structured it in a way, since it was really the first rehab I had ever done, we structured it in a way that I owned, I think, 48% of the LLC, and the rest of the group owned the rest of it.
Right. Okay.
And they all came in with all the money to fund the original rehab budget. But if we were to go over budget, and we did, with a little bit of a vengeance, then how you'd fund it was to the proportion of ownership. So basically, I had to come up with 48 cents of every dollar that had to go in to the overage in the rehab.
Right.
And that, ultimately it kind of seemed fair because they were coming up with my original budget. I'm the operator. I'm setting the budget.
Right. You're the one who should get it right.
If I go over, it's going to come out of my flesh too.
Right.
So I had to pony up, money in order to fund the second part of the fundraise. And I think I might've had to raise money 2 times after the initial one, which is ever since then I haven't, but you never want to do that. But it's just, I know one of the future questions we're going to talk about are like the hardest things that
we can roll there. That's fine.
In real estate.
Absolutely. That is one of my questions I ask, by the way. That's one of the questions I ask people before I hand them money.
I don't know. Can you read this?
No,
I have
can't.
hardest here. Well, it's
Hardest, yeah.
backwards. Hardest, and I wrote all of it. All of it is the hardest.
All of it is hard. Yeah. So I always ask people before I loan them money, I say, you have to do at least 6 flips, and you have to tell me about your hardest experience in real estate and how you handled it. So tell us about your hardest experience in real estate and how you handle it.
Well,
and you say all of it. It's all hard. It's all freaking hard. I've been at this for 30 years and I'm still talking to you on the phone about this has been difficult. This is freaking hard. And I'm 30 years into this stuff.
Well, you gotta,
I can't swear.
Somewhere in high school, somebody told me, I forget, they called it like the traveler's proverb. And the proverb goes, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken.
Oh, okay.
And I've kind of carried that with me because, it's like, I don't know about you, but stuff happens in life. So you can't just be rigid in your mindset of, it's only going to work out this way, because it doesn't always work out that way. So, one of the first hardest things that I did was that first deal. It just literally the first week that we started the rehab, I think we found out that our roof that we thought was going to be $6,000 turned into $25,000. So I was already over budget in the first week because it was completely rotten. We had to completely rebuild the roof, not just put shingles on. So I don't want to spend too much time in the details on that. But the point was so many things went wrong. It was over budget. Took too long. The guy that I had managing the project, this was a remote rehab. It was 1,000 miles away. I was up in Oregon. So the guy I had project managing it, halfway through, I started getting drunk calls from him. He was an alcoholic and I didn't know that. So I had to fire my project manager because I have
miles away.
I have legal LLC member investors on this. So I have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the project. So I had to fire him. He was a personal friend. And I did not know that. That's a whole other show right there.
Yes.
This is just the first deal. So so we were over budget. My project manager is an alcoholic. My roof completely had to be rebuilt. When I had to raise more money more than once from my investors. So
and it was a year to sell.
I had to come up with how I was going to sell that and position that to them to the point where they could buy in and continue to understand that we're going to make it to the other end of the project. When we got finally done with the rehab, we put it on the market and nobody wanted it. I think we put it on the market in like April and we sold it in December.
Okay.
So that's no fun either.
No, it's no fun. I hate holding costs. I hate holding costs.
So that's, people watch flipping shows and it's like, oh yeah, you buy it for this much. It's only this much in rehab. There's no holding costs because we don't put that on the numbers because it makes them look any better. Doesn't make them look better. And then you make $100,000 on everything. You just put paint on it, you make $100,000. So it's not quite that simple. So
what'd you get out of that deal? I mean, come on. A sane person would say, I'm going to go back to my W-2. This is ridiculous. This thing didn't work at all. Well, I'm done, but you didn't. You stayed with it.
The beauty was that it took a year. I mean, that was a painful part of it, but it also took a year. So that meant I had to use that other time to continue to keep myself profitable. So that's where I was. I've had direct mail marketing campaigns that I was out and I was finding deals and I was wholesaling deals. One of those deals I made $60,000 on as an assignment deal. And so you just got to keep moving. And fortunately, by the time it had sold, I had been continuing to do things in Southern California. I'd been able to flip a couple of properties, wholesale 4 properties, and we were making money. That just was that, and that allowed me essentially to take a $50,000 loss on that property because I had money that I could lose at that point. And what I took out of that was just an enormous amount of knowledge on.
Yeah, I was going to say, So why did you stayed with real estate anyway? So what did it, how do you show up, grow up, and stand up?
I learned so much about how to vet a house and walk through a house and see what the problems were because we ran into so many of them in that project. So I think that really helped me in the coming years in flipping properties, it's like every house that I bought, I walked on the roof. I mean, the whole thing's rotten, you don't want to make that mistake again.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good suggestion. Walk on the roof. I like that.
Yeah, walked on the roof. If you fall through, you might want to pay attention to that. So
that's good.
Keep going. So as you said, you learned a lot from that one.
I learned about how to manage investors, managing expectations, making sure that you've got buffers in toward your rehab costs, over raising money, raising more money than you actually need, so that if things take longer, you're not stuck holding the bag and needing to come back and re-raise money. It's like, I'm really grateful that I ran into those problems, because I kind of got so many things, just this quick, rapid education. And fortunately, I was making money along the way that allowed me to continue to go on. Plus, at the end of the day, my investors who were members of the LLC, I think they were on the hook for 20% loss of their principal, which that's no good. But and I think they took about a 4% loss. I took the rest of the loss, and they were pretty darn happy with that.
Yeah.
And what that did is that bought me an awful lot of loyalty with them. And many of those people continued to a couple of them, I never asked to be involved in another deal, because they were very challenging to work with. They didn't really understand that when you get involved in a deal, it's possible to lose money. So, but the people that I did re-invite in, I have done deal after deal after deal with. So it built a lot of loyalty. That story also has helped me raise an enormous amount of money, because I don't have any reason to lie to people. I feel like that story it shares a lot about me. It shares a lot about my background and experience. And when somebody is going to invest with you, they really invest in you, and they take the time, if they feel comfortable with you, and that you have integrity. That story it tells a lot of, I think, the key things that people are looking for when they're looking to invest. So I was new and looking to raise money. Don't tell people, definitely don't lie to your investors. And don't, if you've got mistakes that you've made, I think it's great. It's good to be transparent on your mistakes, because if an investor is wanting to invest with you, they don't want you to be making your first mistakes on them. And so knowing that you've made mistakes, that you're transparent about your mistakes, that speaks to your honesty and your integrity. Right? Yeah. Because I know I'm flawed. I make mistakes on a pretty regular basis. I mean, I could get my wife in here, and I'm sure she could talk for the rest of the night on that one.
All our partners know our limitations.
I have a lot of kids, so it's like, it humbles you. You make mistakes all the time. So so I learned so much on that. And I think that really was a key to success, not necessarily the losing the money part, but everything else that I got beyond that. You just kind of got to look at it as like tuition. And I've lost money on other deals. So, I've paid a few rounds of tuition. But, I've been able to take that and make, 10, 20 times more money as a result.
And that is the bottom line. The bottom line isn't, do you never lose money? The bottom line is, can you build more than you lose? And
what can you leverage that? Your loss, you can leverage a loss into something else, right? Who you are as an individual is what you take with you. So if you're growing as a person, right, you're expanding as a person, your possibilities continue to expand. If you have a small mindset and you're thinking about, how can I protect just this little piece, that's just for me, then I think you just limit your possibilities. But as you grow, new opportunities present themselves because of those steps that you take in personal growth. So
let me repeat back to you some things I've heard you say. So getting people's trust, because you are a person of integrity and you are a person of transparency. You tell your story of how you've managed being in a hard situation, so people can trust you, because they're going to assume what you've done in the past, you're probably going to do in the future. And when it comes to an investor, if you can explain to your investors, you've lost money, but you've made your investors whole, even 4% within whole, right? They can trust you on that. You've done 100 deals, so you have the expertise. You walk them through the deal in detail so they don't have questions about the deal itself. Sounds like you garner trust, but then you add one more piece on top of that. How do you survive being in real estate for 100 flips? And your first one or second one is a loss. And I know you've taken losses since, and you've made your investors whole on those losses, and you've ponied up and you've finished the deal and you've made them whole on more than just that one story. Let's talk about the mindset. Like you walked right into it. Like, this is not an easy thing to use real estate for your financial freedom. Let's pause for a moment and say, like, we talked about your hardest moments in investing. How did it help you grow up? And what is it in your mindset that you think made the difference between you walking away and you staying and growing up?
It's a great question. I think even going back to like before I had ever done a deal, you know, I also wrote on my list of hardest things. One of the lists of the hardest things was my first deal, getting to the place where I did my first deal. Because like I said, in 2010, I bought these training packages and I went through the trainings, and it took 2 years before I quit my job and did my first deal. And I tell you what, it was so painful. I would go to club meetings and I'd hear people talk about their successes, and I was doing everything that I could in order to be successful and find a deal. But there's a stick to itness. For me, there was a line drawn in the sand. There's not another option. I didn't want to go get a corporate job. I didn't want to go start a different business. I was committed to the process. And I think success comes through perseverance, right? You can read tons of successful people's stories. And I think it's just a common thread that goes through them is perseverance. You know, whether it's Steve Jobs, et cetera, you know, there's so much of it that you're gonna run against, you're gonna hit your head against walls. You know, I remember when I was starting and I didn't want to pick up the phone and I didn't want to call people. But if I didn't do that, it wasn't going to lead to a deal. If I didn't pull up my computer and start looking for properties and then calling agents and then going out and seeing the properties and making offers, if I didn't do all those things, I wouldn't be where I'm at. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, and I'm.
What made you have that fire under your backside to do all that? That takes fire to go from somebody who was in the music industry, who was really more self-reflective, I guess. I don't know what the right word is. You could have called it an introvert. I don't know what you call it, but somebody who'd never really done that to, all right, now I'm going to call people I don't know and I'm going to have them give me money. You know, like there are a lot of people who just shy away from that. And so you must have had something underneath you, some fire underneath you that was making you do that, whether it was a life circumstance or whether it's just a sheer commitment to your wife, or just like, that's how you roll and that's how you barrel through things.
I don't know that I felt like I had really a lot of other good options. I'd gone to school to become a chiropractor. I was seriously considering going down that route. And I went through all the way up to, I had all the prerequisites done. My next step was to go into chiropractic school. And to me, it felt like it was back to that security thing that I was talking about at the beginning. It felt like it was, you know, a more secure way, because I literally could have gone to school and then I would have had to move to Oregon. I could have taken over my dad's practice. My uncle has a successful practice, and my stepdad, they're all chiropractors within 50 minutes of each other. I could have taken over 3 practices. And I feel like my personality would have been a real good fit for it. I'm sure I would have done well. But the thing for me that at the end of the day, that just, because it was a big commitment even to get there, because I was working, you know, a full-time job and I was going to night school. So I you know, it was 9 to 5, 8 to 5 or whatever. And then 6 to 10 almost every night. It was grueling to go through all of that school. But what stopped me was that in order to be a chiropractor, in order to make money in that business, you have to show up every day. And I don't want to show up every day. I want passive income. I want to be able to buy assets that are going to give me cash flow so that I can live the life and the freedom that I want to live. So that's what ultimately stopped, even though I had this great opportunity. It really was a great opportunity, but I couldn't do it because I'd be locking in 30 years of having to show up every single day. There's no leverage in that business. I love real estate because I can leverage time. I don't have to use my time. I've learned so much about raising money, and I've talked. I haven't even really gotten into this, but my first rental properties I purchased. I bought, I think in 2014, I bought my first rental property, and it came through a family member who told me about somebody else that I actually knew them who needed to sell their house. They were probably facing foreclosure or something like that. And because I had had this experience in raising money for flip properties, because I had investors, literally, actually, it was the person who funded that deal in Oregon who we lost money on, who was the loan position on there. I took her same amount of money and I plopped it on this rental property. And I had background, I'd done some renovations, so I knew how to renovate the house. I learned a ton about how the banking world works and how mortgages are put together, because I didn't really have enough money to start putting like 20% down payments on rental properties. So I still had to think creatively. How can I buy rentals? Because I knew that was the ultimate path to freedom. I got into flipping because I had to replace my income. I was married. I had 2 kids, I think, at that time. I have 5 now. So I had to replace my income, so that's why I did flipping, but I knew that rentals was the ultimate path. So, but, learning all these pieces, learning how to take somebody and put them as a private investor, as a loan on the property. I think I bought that house for $100,000. I think I borrowed 135 from her. So I borrowed a ton more money than the house was worth at the time. I think I used 20,000 to renovate the house, and 25,000 to renovate the house. And I ultimately got a loan for $135,000 from a long-term bank. That paid off my investor. I had done comps, and I knew that I was on the low end going to get this thing to comp for 170 to 180. So I knew that I was going to be able to essentially pull this off using somebody else's money. So because I didn't have money to put into it. I needed my money to live on at that point. But that's the Burr method, buy,
rehab,
renovate,
rent,
refinance, and repeat.
Yes.
Repeat as often as you possibly can.
As often as you can, yes.
But I kind of stumbled onto that. I didn't know what a Burr was. I just did my first one as a Burr. I thought maybe it'd be a flip, but if I could hold it, and if it cash flowed like 150 to 200 bucks a month, which wasn't great, but ultimately down the road, I sold that house last year and I made about $100,000 in profit on that house, because it had appreciated over those number of years. And, and that's just using the power of your mind. That's the thing about real estate that I love, is like, once you start to get into this stuff and you get your hands dirty and you learn the mechanics of how stuff work, it's powerful. One of the things that I remember reading in one of the Robert Kiyosaki books is that once you learn something, it can never be taken away from you. And it's really true. So people who are beginners, like, you walk in and there's just this, it feels like a huge barrier to entry, because it feels like there's so much you need to know. And you're confused. It's like, what is escrow, or what is title, and all these terms that you've never heard before. They feel like it's this big shroud of mystery in real estate. But once you've been through it a few times, you start to learn where those pieces are. And then, like I said, with that rental property, that was using the power of my knowledge. I leveraged a relationship from that deal that enabled me to buy this house without any money of my own. And ultimately, I made all the cash flow for like 6 years of owning it. Plus I made $100,000 at the end of it. And it's not short-term capital gain, it's long-term capital gain. So I'm not even going to have to pay big taxes on it.
Yep.
So it's beautiful. It's life-changing. Real estate can absolutely be life-changing.
You walked right into it. So my next question was, what made you want to become financially free? And you just completely walked right into it. I didn't have to say a word. You just went, because I didn't want to be a chiropractor, because I didn't want to share. I didn't want to trade my time for the next 30 years running perfectly great businesses that were perfectly great opportunities. I wanted to be able to leverage my brain and and develop freedom over my time by having passive income, whether I'm leveraging other people's time or whether I'm leveraging these assets called rentals that allow me to have control over my financial freedom. So let me ask you one final question, then we're gonna close it out. So why did you want control over your financial freedom? Is it like an instinct thing? Is it like, I just really need it? Or is it like, gee, there's a vision in your head that says, this is the life I want to be living?
Well, I mean, I think for me, I don't necessarily like working for people. I don't like other people telling me what to do. I feel like I was a great employee. I would listen to my boss.
I'm a good employee. I just don't want to be.
Yeah, I just don't want to be. I mean, I want to travel. Before I did all this stuff, I traveled around the world, and my wife and I love to travel. And I've got 5 beautiful children, and I want to be involved in their lives. I want to be able to drive them and take them to baseball practice. I want to be able to go take them hiking. We homeschool our kids. And one thing that my wife shared with me early on, she told me a story about this family that basically they homeschooled their kids. And then one year they took the whole family to the Mediterranean. They learned how to sail. And as a family, they sailed around the Mediterranean, visiting different places. And I don't know that that's necessarily our direct dream.
No, but that's a really great example.
But something like that is what I want to be able to do. I love it. Yeah. I can, I wake up in the morning. I can, sometimes it's having kids and family. It can be work. It's like you get up and you got to make breakfast or whatever. But it's also a privilege to be able to do that and to get to see them. I work from home, so I fortunately have my own little office area, and I can look out my window and I can watch them play. I have more control over my life, and to be able to live it the way that I want to live it. That's awesome thing. I don't have anything against people working jobs, but when I walk into different businesses, I know what it felt like to sit in a cubicle. I had done that for 10 years and or maybe 7 years. I was a salesman at the end of it, so I traveled. But just the freedom to do what you want and have more control over the ultimate outcome of your life was what I wanted. I didn't want to have to go in on Saturdays because somebody needs me to do something that doesn't bring me fulfillment. Being around my family brings me fulfillment. Being able to do some of these things, it's fun to raise money and to be able to pay people interest, because I know that I'm impacting people's lives for good. Yes. It's fun to do some of these projects. Some of the projects are not very fun. You've got problems that you have to deal with, but I just feel like I get to express who I am as a person more. I get to be more me than I would be if I was forced to kind of live in the confines of the 9 to 5. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of work to be done, and there's times when I don't want to do it, and all that still happens. But I'm grateful for the freedom that it has afforded me, because it's changed my life, and I hope it will impact and change my children's lives to be able to allow them to live more the lifestyle that they want. Plus, there's so many feel good things about it. It's awesome to be able to employ people and to see people livelihoods benefit from that. I've got contractors who've worked with me for years. I literally have brought them from job to job to job because they treat me right, and so I treat them right. So it feels good to be able to do those sorts of things and to be able to benefit from it as well. So
leadership feels good. Not only does freedom feel good, it's not, and as it's not in my questions, right? Of course, my questions are about freedom and financial freedom, which allows you to lead to time. But the process of leadership for me feels good. Whether I'm got employees, or whether I'm doing a flip project, or whether I'm helping somebody grow in their own leadership in their life. But the process of, or leader of the FIBI Pasadena meeting and community, right? That leadership feels good to know that you're making a difference and you're adding something through your leadership is satisfying.
It is. Well, I like it because I know before this all came on, I talked about how being involved in real estate gives you opportunities to grow. It doesn't mean you're going to grow, but you're going to have lots of opportunities
to grow.
You know,
yes.
you're going to have sleepless nights where you're worried about stuff, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with your stress. You can either drink, or you can find other ways to manage your stress. You have opportunities to grow. It doesn't mean you're going to grow. But, the thing that I love about networking, and there's a lot of people who come to me to try and learn. I like sharing because I like calling other people up to a higher level. I feel like there's so much more that people can get out of life. I feel like so many people feel trapped in that. And the reality is that that's what happens between these ears. You're not actually trapped, but there's an educational gap that you have to overcome in order to learn how to set yourself free. And what happens on the inside of you and who you become through that process, it's like gold, where, all the impurities are getting stripped away. If you're handling it the right way, it can also crush you. Maybe some lead gets dropped in there if you're not paying attention, but but you can become a better person. You can learn how to handle, so much more. I mean, things that would crush me, 8 years ago. They're not even a concern anymore, but that's because I've overcome. And I think that's actually something missing in our society. So many people are looking for an easy way out. And the reality is there is no easy way. It's a beautiful design. The design is that you have to lean into it. There's like a gale force wind that is pushing against you, trying to tear you apart. And you've got to find a way to anchor yourself and push into it and overcome it. And the satisfaction that comes from that, money is great, but the personal development and personal satisfaction that comes from finding a way through and finding a way to be successful, overcoming your setbacks. I've had setbacks too that I've had to come to the other side of. It changes who you are.
So the process of leadership feels good. And you were summarizing that process of leadership when I interrupted. So let's round that out. And then let's give people your contact information so they can get a hold of you, whether it's to work with you, to give you money because now you've proven yourself as an expert, or they have a good deal for you, whether it's a flip property or an investment.
Sure.
Let's give them the contact information about how they can get a hold of you. But yes, you were saying leadership feels good.
Yeah, no, it feels good to invest in other people. There's been people who've come to me wanting to get started. I've been able to help them, and they've gone on to be really successful in different areas than I have. Some have gone on to do the same kind of things that I'm doing. It feels good to give back. But I think the main point of what I was saying is like the process of personal growth and development, and becoming someone who can handle these sorts of things. It takes time, it takes pressure. And, but at the end of the day, if you keep leaning into that, you walk away, the person that I think we all want to be. I think we all want to be people of integrity. We all want to be people who are successful and they give and share with other people. So,
we can.
Everybody's got, I was just going to say, everybody's got something that they can give. Everybody has different skill sets. Yeah. You may not look just like me, but you can have a different approach and still be just as successful. You don't have to, I used to think that I had to mirror the people that I would, envy or want to emulate. But the reality is you just have to be the best you that you can be. Yeah. And you find a niche that works for you. I tend to be, I think, really good with people on a one-on-one basis. People obviously trust me, with money. So, whatever your thing is, you got to find out what that is and go with that. Find out what your strengths are and double down on those strengths. So anyways, if people want to get a hold of me.
Yeah, people want to get a hold of you. Give them the information.
My website is summitwithus.com, SUMMITWITH, like a mountain, withus.com.
Yep.
My email is kirk@summitwithus.com, and I'll even give my phone number. It is
I usually do.
323-744-0553.
Say the phone number again.
323-744-0553. Kirk, KIRK, @summitwithus.com.
Perfect. Kirk, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the time for doing the podcast. Thank you for co-running my FIBI Pasadena meeting with me. Thank you for letting me watch you, develop yourself. And thank you for taking my money and returning it all back to me all the times that you have. Thank you. If I've never thanked you for that, let me thank you for that.
Well, thank you for the many midnight counseling sessions that we had.
Yeah, definitely not. I know I've never talked to you. Oh, well, actually I have talked to you at midnight, haven't I? Yeah.
Oh, we have.
That's at the end of meetings. Yes. So thank you. Let me round this out. Thank you so much for listening to the Real Estate Breakthrough Show. My name is Christina Suter, your host. Tune in next week for the next podcast.